The bridge was never meant to connect us. It was built to keep us apart. Rain slicked the metal under my boots, turning the yellow lane lines into blurred veins of light. Below, traffic tore through the city like a living thing, headlights stretching into white scars. Neon bled off the wet cables and stained everything the color of cheap promises. "Move," I snapped, catching Kai by the collar before he slipped. "Don't look down." "I wasn't," he started. Then a siren wailed close enough to rattle my teeth. He shut up and ran. We spilled onto the bridge in a tight line, 6 of us where there should have been 12. The deal had gone bad fast, too fast. 1 minute we were counting crates, the next the air was buzzing with corporate drones and the smell of ozone. That was never an accident. "Drones on our 6, Mara shouted, skidding around a stalled car. 2, maybe 3. "Keep left," I said. "They won't fire over traffic. Not officially anyway." A spotlight snapped on behind us, slicing through rain. Another siren joined the first. I felt it before I saw it, that cold, precise pressure at the base of my skull. Alpha territory. Corporate grade. Great. North Corp security, a voice boomed, amplified and perfectly calm. "Stop where you are." I laughed. It came out sharp and breathless. "Yeah," I muttered. "Sure." I cut right, vaulted a barrier, and landed hard, my knees screaming. Pain flared and focused me. Good. Pain meant I was still ahead of them. A drone swooped low. I grabbed a road flare from my jacket, struck it, and hurled it straight into the camera lens. The explosion was bright and ugly, sparks scattering across the rain-slick asphalt. "Go," I yelled. "Now." My team scattered, disappearing into the shadows at the far end of the bridge. I turned to follow, and stopped. He stood in the middle of the lane like he'd always been there. Tall. Broad shoulders under a dark coat that didn't move in the wind.
If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting.
Rain slid off him like it knew better than to linger. His hair was dark, neatly cut, plastered slightly to his forehead. His face. Calm. Not bored. Not angry. Just attentive, like I was a problem he'd already solved. Adam North. I'd never met him in person. But you don't lead a street team this long without learning the faces of the people paid to break you. "Well," I said, forcing my mouth into a grin my pulse didn't agree with. "If it isn't the city's favorite leash holder." His eyes flicked over me, quick, assessing. Not my face, my hands, my stance, the way I was already angled to run. "Toby," he said. Hearing my name out of his mouth sent a stupid, unwanted jolt through my chest. Alpha presence hit harder up close, a clean, sharp thing that cut through the rain and metal and fear. My skin prickled. My instincts snarled. I ignored them. "You're blocking traffic," I said. "That's a violation, isn't it? Or do you only care about rules when they're convenient?" The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "You're bleeding." I glanced down. Red bloomed through the tear in my jeans, warm against the cold rain. I shrugged. Occupational hazard. Behind him, drones hovered, waiting. He hadn't called them in closer. That registered, somewhere under the adrenaline. "Your deal tonight," Adam said evenly, "was never going to work." "No," I shot back. "It worked fine. Someone just decided to tip the scales." His gaze sharpened. "Someone always does." For a heartbeat we just stood there, rain hammering down, the city roaring beneath us. The bridge hummed underfoot, a living boundary. "You're outnumbered," he said. "And injured." "Still faster than you," I said, even as my knee throbbed in protest. Another pause. He shifted, just enough to open a line past him, a narrow gap between his shoulder and the barrier. I stared at it. "You should go," Adam said quietly. I looked back at his face. "You're bad at your job," I told him. "No," he replied. "I'm choosing which parts of it to do." The drones stayed where they were. The sirens didn't get closer. Something twisted in my chest, suspicion, relief, anger. I didn't thank him. I didn't nod. I ran. I tore past him, close enough to catch his scent, clean, sharp rain and something like steel. My body reacted before my brain could shut it down. I hated that. At the far end of the bridge, I vaulted the barrier and vanished into the city's veins. Heart hammering, breath burning. I didn't slow until the sirens faded. When I finally did, I leaned against a brick wall, rain dripping off my chin, and laughed softly to myself. Adam North had let me go. And that wasn't mercy. It was a decision. The warehouse smelled like oil, damp concrete, and burnt coffee. Home. Warm light spilled from hanging lamps, cutting through the shadows and making the graffiti on the walls pulse with color. Wolves, broken bridges, names crossed out and rewritten. Our history, painted and repainted every year. My team was already there when I limped in. "Boss," Kai said, relief flashing across his face before he tried to hide it. "You good?" I rolled my shoulder. "Define good." Mara snorted from where she sat on a crate, reloading a sidearm. "You're bleeding through your jeans." "Fashion choice," I said, and earned a few weak laughs. Good. Laughter meant they weren't panicking anymore. I took the chair at the center table, not a throne, just the one everyone defaulted to. The room quieted. Eyes on me. Waiting. That weight never got lighter. "We lost the crates," I said. "We didn't lose anyone." "That's a win." Jax, my second, leaned forward. He was older than most of us, broader, scars etched deep into his skin. A pragmatist to the bone. North Corp doesn't move like that unless they had a reason. Someone tipped them off. "I know. Neighbor packs are already sniffing around," he continued. "Bridge wolves crossed into our east stretch last week. They'll see tonight as weakness." A murmur rippled through the younger ones. Anger. Fear. Both dangerous if you let them fester. I raised a hand. Silence followed. "Territory isn't concrete and lines on a map," I said. "It's us. You. Me. Them." I gestured around the room. "If we start biting each other over scraps, we do the system's job for it." Mara frowned. "So we do nothing?" "No," I said. "We don't overreact." Jack studied me. "That's not the same thing as doing nothing." "Exactly." I pushed myself up, ignoring the protest in my knee, and walked the line of the room. Past a kid barely out of his first shift, knuckles raw. Past Lena, eyes sharp, jaw set like she was ready to start a war by herself. "They want us loud and stupid," I said. "They want chaos they can manage. We don't give it to them." "And if they push?" Lena asked. I met her gaze. "Then we push back, together. On our terms." That seemed to settle something. Shoulders loosened. Breaths evened out. Jax crossed his arms. "You're sure about this?" I wasn't. That was the truth I didn't say. "I'm sure that if I mess this up," I said instead, "it won't just be my blood on the pavement. So I won't." The room was quiet for a second. Then Kai nodded. One by one the others followed. Trust. Fragile. Heavy. When the meeting broke, Jax stayed behind. "You ran into him," he said, low. "Yeah. And?" I hesitated. Just for a breath. "He let me walk." Jax's brow furrowed. "Why?" I looked at the wall, at a bridge painted in red, cracked down the middle. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because if I was wrong about Adam North, if tonight wasn't a fluke, then the rules I'd built my territory on were about to change. And if I guessed wrong, people would get hurt. That was the part that kept me awake long after the lights dimmed. Corporate towers don't sleep. They just dim. From the roof across the street, the North Corp building looked like a blade driven into the city. All glass and sharp lines, reflecting a version of the skyline that didn't include people like us. The wind up here smelled different. Clean. Filtered. Expensive. I lay flat against the concrete, binoculars pressed to my eyes, and watched order happen. Black vehicles rolled into the lower bay in perfect sequence. Security teams moved in clean lines, boots striking marble in practiced rhythm. No shouting. No panic. Just efficiency polished until it gleamed. If you didn't know better, you'd call it beautiful. Target in sight, a voice crackled through my earpiece. North, central floor. I adjusted my angle. Adam stood in a glass-walled operations room, coat gone, sleeves rolled up. From here, he looked almost ordinary. Just another man surrounded by screens and data. But the way people moved around him told a different story. They deferred without thinking. Watched his hands before making a move. A junior officer said something I couldn't hear. Adam's head snapped up. He shook his head once. The officer hesitated. Tried again. Adam leaned forward, palms flat on the table, and spoke. The officer went pale. A second later, half the team changed course. Whatever Adam had said, it wasn't a suggestion. Below, in the service alley, a scuffle broke out. 2 corporate enforcers had someone pinned, one of the bridge wolves by the look of him. He wasn't fighting back, just curled in on himself, trying to protect his ribs. I felt my jaw tighten. One enforcer raised his baton. Enough! Adam's voice cut through the comms. Calm, cold. The baton froze mid-air. He's resisting, the enforcer argued. He's restrained, Adam replied. Stand down. A pause. Then the baton lowered. The wolf was hauled to his feet instead of the pavement. I exhaled slowly. He doesn't like unnecessary force, I thought. Or he knows when it's bad optics. Maybe both. The feed jumped. Boardroom. Long table. Suits. Smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The street presence is escalating, one of them said. We need firmer measures. Adam didn't sit. He stood at the head of the table, hands behind his back. Firmer isn't the same as smarter. We can't afford to look weak. We can't afford another body, Adam shot back. Every crackdown pushes them closer to open conflict. A woman with silver hair leaned forward. Conflict is profitable. The word landed like a slap. Adam's jaw tightened. Not when it burns infrastructure we're standing on. Silence. Tension you could cut. Finally, the woman smiled. You're very principled tonight, Mr. North. Adam met her gaze. I'm consistent. The feed cut. I lowered the binoculars, heart beating slower now, thoughts racing faster. Adam North wasn't running the whole show. He was enforcing a system that didn't always listen, and sometimes actively worked against him. Corporate order looked clean from the outside. But from up here, I could see the dirt on its hands. And the uncomfortable truth settling in my gut was this. If Adam ever decided to stop playing by their rules, the fallout wouldn't stay contained. Neither would I. The underpass smelled like mold, rust, and old water, the kind of place the city pretended not to have. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing like trapped insects, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Above us, traffic thundered across the bridge, oblivious. We dragged our catch into the open space between two crumbling pillars. Careful, Mara said, shoving him down onto a broken crate. He bruises easy. He laughed, thin, shaky. Always so gentle, Toby. I crouched in front of him. You shouldn't know my name. The man, lean, nervous, eyes darting, swallowed. His scent was wrong. Not fully street. Not fully corporate. A mess of borrowed loyalties. Talk, I said. Start with who paid you. He spread his hands. Depends who's asking. Jack stepped forward, shadow falling heavy across the crate. You're not in a bargaining position. The man's gaze flicked to him, then back to me. You really don't see it, do you? Try me. He leaned forward, chains clinking. You think this is street versus tower, wolves versus suits. It's cleaner that way. My jaw tightened. Spare me the philosophy. Fine, he said. It's not North Corp running the board. The words hung there, damp and heavy. Mara scoffed. Everyone says that when they're scared. He shook his head. They're part of it. But they're not the ones setting the lines. What lines? I asked. Territories, patrol routes, where deals go bad. He smiled, sharp and ugly. You and Adam North keep tripping over each other because someone wants you to. I stilled. You know North? Everyone knows North, he said. He's predictable. You're the variable. That landed harder than I liked. Who's the third party? Jax demanded. The man laughed again, breath hitching. You think I'd still be breathing if I knew their names? I grabbed his collar and yanked him close. Then tell me what you do know. His eyes met mine, fear finally breaking through the bravado. They sell stability. To core, to packs. They profit when borders bleed but don't break. My stomach twisted. Tonight's deal, he continued, was bait. Meant to pull North Corp in. Meant to make you look sloppy. And you? I asked quietly. I get paid to pass information both ways, he said. Keep the war simmering. No winners. No end. Silence swallowed the underpass, broken only by dripping water. I released him and stood, backing away like the floor had shifted under my feet. For years I'd told myself the rules were simple. Street versus system. Us versus them. Fight hard enough, and you carve space to breathe. But this? This was something else. Mara crossed her arms. So, what now? I stared at the concrete wall, at a faded tag of a bridge cracked down the middle. The image felt less like art and more like a warning. Now, I said slowly, we stop pretending this is a two-sided fight. Jack studied me. You're thinking about North. I'm thinking about leverage, I replied. But even as I said it, Adam's calm voice on the bridge echoed in my head. You should go. If there was a third hand pushing us into each other, then maybe the enemy of my enemy wasn't just a useful coincidence. Maybe it was the only way out. Rain turned the ground under the bridge into a mirror, broken and restless. Neon from the riverside clubs bled into the puddles, stretching faces and colors until nothing looked quite real. The concrete pillars loomed overhead like ribs, holding up a city that refused to look down. I came alone. Not unarmed, just unaccompanied. There's a difference. Adam North was already there. He stood a few steps back from the light, hands loose at his sides, coat buttoned against the rain. Two silhouettes lingered farther down the underpass, corporate security, pretending not to listen. I could smell them. Trained. Tense. Nice place, I said, stopping just inside the glow of a flickering lamp. Very romantic. You bring all your enemies here, or am I special? His eyes flicked over me, quick and assessing, then settled on my face. You're late. Traffic, I replied. Bridges are tricky like that. A pause. His mouth curved, just barely. Point to me. You asked for this meeting, he said. I suggested it, I corrected. You showed up. That's on you. He stepped closer. Not into my space, not quite. Close enough that the air shifted, that sharp, clean alpha presence brushing against my senses. My instincts stirred, irritated and alert. I didn't move. Let's skip the posturing, Adam said. You know someone's feeding us both bad information. And you know your house has leaks, I shot back. Funny how we keep tripping over each other in the same places. Funny, he agreed. Or designed. I watched his face carefully as I spoke. There's a third party. They profit off controlled chaos. Borders that bleed but don't break. Something in his gaze tightened. Just for a second. Go on, he said. Tonight's deal was bait, I continued. Meant to make me look sloppy and pull your people in loud. It worked. You still got out, Adam noted. Because you let me, I said. I met his eyes. Why? Rain dripped from his lashes. Because the order to escalate didn't come from me. There it was. An admission, thin but real. You're bored? I asked. Part of it, he replied. And not the worst part. I snorted. Congratulations. You're officially less awful than I thought. That bar was low. I smiled despite myself. We stood there, rain filling the silence, the city breathing above us. You don't trust me, Adam said. Of course not. Good, he replied. Neither do I. I tilted my head. Then why are we talking? Because, he said, stepping back, giving me space this time. We're being maneuvered. And you're right. It's not a two-player game. I studied him, weighing every instinct screaming at me to walk away. To keep things simple. To keep my people safe by keeping my enemies clear. But simple was a lie someone else was selling. Temporary, I said. Information sharing. No joint operations. Agreed. No traps. Obvious ones at least. I laughed. You're terrible at reassurance. You're terrible at following rules. We shook on it. Not hands, just a mutual nod. Acknowledgement. As I turned to leave, Adam's voice followed me. Toby. I glanced back. For what it's worth, he said, this city would be worse without you in it. I blinked. Then smirked. Careful, North. That almost sounded like respect. He didn't deny it. I disappeared into the rain, pulse steady, mind racing. A truce with an alpha I didn't trust. Under a bridge built to keep us apart. What could possibly go wrong? We didn't plan to work together. That was the lie we told ourselves as we moved across the rooftops, keeping parallel lines like rival constellations. Rain had eased into a fine mist, slicking the metal grates and turning the city into a map of glowing arteries below. Adam's voice crackled in my earpiece. Target moving east. Second bridge. I see him, I said, crouched behind a ventilation unit. He's faster than your projections. Your people tend to be. I smirked despite the tension. Careful. That almost sounded like admiration. He didn't reply, but he adjusted the route on my display, cutting off the runner's escape. Efficient. Clean. Too clean. The double agent bolted across a maintenance walkway, boots clanging against rusted steel. I sprinted after him, lungs burning, knees screaming. To my left, Adam moved with precise economy. Every step calculated, never wasting motion. For a corporate alpha, he ran like someone who'd learned the hard way. "Drone support incoming," Adam said. "Stand by." "Negative," I shot back. "He's heading for the bridge." The second bridge loomed ahead. Narrower, older, its underbelly a maze of cables and service ladders. A perfect place to disappear. The runner leapt. Adam followed. I swore. The metal rung Adam grabbed snapped under his weight. He went down hard, barely catching himself on a lower beam. For one suspended terrible second he hung there. Rain, gravity, and traffic roaring beneath him. Protocol would have said, "Secure the target." I didn't think. I slid across the slick edge and grabbed Adam's wrist, fingers locking tight. The jolt ran up my arm, sharp and electric. "Don't let go," I snapped. "Working on it," he replied. Breath tight but controlled. The runner vanished into the shadows. I didn't care. I hauled. Muscles screaming. Boots slipping until Adam found footing. We collapsed onto the platform, rain soaking us both. For a heartbeat we just lay there, chests heaving, the city rushing on below like nothing had happened. "You could have taken him," Adam said quietly. I pushed myself up. "Couldn't take him if you were dead." He looked at me then. Really looked. Something unreadable crossed his face. "Drone support rerouting," he said into his comm. "Stand down." I froze. "That's against your protocol." "Yes," he replied evenly. "It is." We moved fast after that, slipping through technical corridors and maintenance shafts, covering each other without discussing it. When security teams closed in, Adam diverted them. When cameras swept too close, I triggered blind spots I'd memorized years ago. No more words. Just motion. At the far end of the bridge we stopped, rain dripping from cables like a countdown. "We lost him," I said. "For now," Adam replied. "But we learned where not to look." I eyed him. "You just violated about 6 corporate rules." 7, he corrected. "If we're being precise." I laughed softly. "You're going to get fired." "Unlikely," he said. "But noted." We stood there, an omega from the street and an alpha from the tower. Both soaked. Both breathing hard, neither backing away. Trust hadn't been declared. It had been proven. One reckless decision at a time. And once you crossed that line, there was no erasing it. The bar sat right at the edge of the water, wedged between an abandoned ferry dock and a line of shuttered warehouses. Its windows were fogged, the neon sign half dead, flickering open like it was making a suggestion rather than a promise. The smell inside was old wood, spilled beer, and salt. Neutral ground, no weapons, no teams. Just us. Adam arrived first, already seated at a small table near the back, a glass of something dark in his hand. He ditched the coat, rolled his sleeves again. No armor, no visible comms. I took the chair across from him and raised a brow. "You drink on duty?" "Only when the duty lies to me," he said. "Fair." A server dropped off a beer in front of me without asking. I took a sip, let the bitterness ground me. For a while, we said nothing. The bar hummed around us, low music, quiet laughter, the slap of water against the dock outside. "You didn't bring backup," I finally said. "Neither did you." "First time for everything." He watched the condensation slide down his glass. "You saved my life." I shrugged. "You broke protocol for me first." "That wasn't protocol," he said. "That was instinct." The word landed heavier than it should have. I leaned back, studying him. Up close, the alpha presence was still there, controlled, precise, but muted, like he was holding the volume down on purpose. My body noticed anyway. I hated that it did. "Does it bother you?" I asked suddenly. His gaze lifted. "What?" "That I'm an omega," I said. "Not fitting the narrative, not waiting for permission." A corner of his mouth curved. "You don't wait for anything." "That's not an answer." He considered me for a moment, then sighed. "The system assumes omegas need protection. Control. Direction." His jaw tightened. "It's wrong." I blinked. "Once." That sounded dangerously close to self-awareness. He chuckled. "Don't get used to it." I took another drink. "You ever think the roles are just convenient labels?" "All the time," he said quietly. "They simplify management, predict behavior. And when behavior doesn't fit? Then it's treated as a threat." I met his eyes. There it was. The crack in the glass tower. "You're part of it," I said. "Even if you don't like it." "I know." His voice was steady, but his grip on the glass tightened. And I've made choices that hurt people because of it. That admission sat between us, raw and real. For the first time since the bridge, I didn't feel like I was standing my ground. I felt seen. Outside, a boat horn sounded low and lonely. I broke the tension with a smirk. You realize if anyone heard this, your board would have a stroke. Occupational hazard, he replied. You're rubbing off on me. Careful, I said. I charge for influence. He laughed, actually laughed, and something in my chest loosened. We finished our drinks in companionable silence. As I stood to leave, Adam spoke again. Toby. I paused. This isn't going to end cleanly, he said. I nodded. Nothing that matters ever does. We walked out separately, the night swallowing us whole. But the truth lingered, sharp, undeniable. And it smelled like rain and possibility. The temporary hub was an old ferry terminal we'd stripped down to bare function. Folding tables, portable screens, paper maps layered with digital projections. The city spread out before us in lines, colors, and numbers, reduced to something you could pretend to control. I hated how familiar it felt. I stood with my hands on the table, leaning over a map marked with patrol routes, dead drops, and recent flare-ups. Adam stood opposite me, jacket draped over the back of a chair, sleeves rolled, eyes sharp. This isn't random, I said. Look at the spacing. Adam tapped the screen, pulling up an overlay. Territories shift just enough to provoke response. Never enough to collapse. Like stirring a pot, I muttered. Keep it hot. Don't let it boil over. He nodded. Exactly. We worked in silence for a while, feeding data into the system. Street intel from my side, corporate logs from his. The patterns emerged slowly, like a bruise darkening under skin. Bridge incidents. Delayed responses. Anonymous tips that triggered crackdowns in the wrong places. Here, Adam said, highlighting a zone near the river. This sector flared 4 times in 6 months. Each time right before a land acquisition, I added. Property values tank. Someone buys cheap. Adam's jaw clenched. Shell companies. And criminal fronts, I said. They launder the same money. I straightened, the weight of it pressing down on my chest. They're selling stability. Adam looked up. How do you mean? To core, to PACs, to anyone with enough to pay, I said. They promise to keep borders intact, violence predictable, manageable, controlled chaos, he said softly. The words echoed in the empty terminal. I slammed my palm onto the table. We've been tearing each other apart over scraps while they build empires. Adam didn't flinch. They need visible conflict. Street versus tower, alpha versus omega. It keeps attention off the real transactions. I laughed, sharp and bitter. We make great distractions. For a moment, the room felt too small. I paced, running a hand through my hair. Every time I hit back at a neighboring pack, someone else profits. And every time I authorize a crackdown, Adam said, they get cover. I stopped. You didn't know. No, he admitted. But I suspected. The numbers never lined up. Still, I said, you pulled the trigger. And you threw the first punch, he shot back. The words hung there, charged. Then something in me shifted. The anger drained, leaving behind something colder. They wanted us to hate each other, I said slowly. To see each other as the problem. Adam met my gaze. It worked. I swallowed. Memories flickered. Nights spent planning retaliation, bodies patched up after fights that solved nothing. The look in my team's eyes when I told them to hold ground at any cost. All of it profitable to someone else. They're still out there, I said. Still betting on us? Adam folded his arms. Then we changed the game. How? I asked. You burn bridges. They build new ones. His mouth curved into something sharp. You don't burn them. You reroute traffic. I studied him. Seeing not the alpha enforcer, not the corporate face, but a man who'd finally seen the strings. Means exposing them, I said. Means losing cover. Means choosing sides, he replied. I thought of my people. Of the warehouse, the graffiti, the trust they'd handed me without conditions. I already chose, I said. Adam nodded once. So did I. The maps glowed between us. The city's fault lines laid bare. We weren't enemies. We were assets that had just realized they were being used. And whoever had been profiting from our war. They were about to learn what happens when the pieces stop moving where they're told. It fell apart in 2 places at once. On the street, it started with silence. Too much of it. I stood in the warehouse doorway, rain dripping off the awning, watching my people move too carefully. No jokes. No music. Everyone avoiding eye contact like they were afraid they'd give something away just by looking wrong. Jax wasn't there. That was my first mistake. Noticing too late. "Where's Jax?" I asked. Mara hesitated. A fraction of a second. "Long enough. He said he had a meet," she replied. "Information?" My stomach tightened. "With who?" She didn't answer. The lights flickered, and my phone buzzed at the same time. Unknown number. Operation compromised. "Get out," I swore and turned, just as the side doors blew inward. Smoke. Shouting. Boots. Not corporate standard timing, too fast, too precise. Someone had handed them our layout. Our schedules. My contingencies. I moved on instinct, grabbing Kai and shoving him behind cover as flashbangs went off. The noise punched through my skull. White and blinding. This wasn't a raid. It was a message. Across the city, Adam North stood in a glass conference room with no windows that opened. The board sat around him like a jury that had already decided the verdict. "You authorized an unsanctioned operation," the silver-haired woman said calmly. "Without oversight." Adam's hands were flat on the table. "I diverted resources to prevent civilian casualties. You diverted them to protect an Omega-led street faction," another voice cut in. Adam looked up sharply. "That's not—" "We have evidence," she continued, sliding a datapad forward. "Encrypted comms, location pings, cooperation." Adam stared at the screen. Fabricated. Clean. Perfect. Someone had used his access codes. "You've been compromised," she said gently. "Step down, until this is resolved." Adam laughed once, short, incredulous. "You're serious?" "Very." Security moved behind him. Not to restrain. Not yet. To remind him. Back in the warehouse, the smoke cleared enough for me to see Jack standing near the far wall, hands raised, face pale. "Don't," I said quietly. He swallowed. "I was trying to keep us safe." "By selling us out?" "They promised stability," he shot back. "Borders that wouldn't shift. Protection." I laughed, sharp and broken. "That's what they promised me too." Sirens closed in from every direction. My phone buzzed again. "Adam. They're moving against me." This was a setup. I stared at the message, chest tight, adrenaline roaring in my ears. Too convenient. Too clean. Jax's voice echoed in my head. "They promised stability." I typed back with shaking fingers. "Did you leak our location?" The reply came instantly. "No." I looked up at Jax, at the chaos bleeding into my territory, at the people I was supposed to protect. Anger flared, hot, irrational. I sent one last message. "You're an alpha. You'll always choose the system." I turned the phone off and threw it across the room. Outside, the city howled. And in two different worlds, the same truth settled in at once. Someone had cut the line holding our fragile trust. And they were counting on us to finish the job for them. The bridge was chaos in motion. Day bled into night under a sky split by emergency lights, rain falling in. Uneven sheets that turned the asphalt into a battlefield of reflections. Sirens wailed from every direction. Traffic was frozen. Abandoned cars angled like broken teeth. Above it all, drones circled in wide, impatient arcs. This was exactly the kind of spectacle they wanted. I moved through it with my hood up and my jaw set, heart hammering hard enough to hurt. My people were scattered along the lower access points, holding lines they were never meant to hold for long. "Pull back," I said into the comm. "This isn't our fight anymore." Static crackled, then Mara's voice. "You sure about that, boss?" "No," I said. "But do it anyway." At the center of the bridge, a makeshift command zone had formed. Corporate security, riot barriers, cameras, and Adam. He stood at the front line, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, coat gone, sleeves rolled like always. His posture was rigid, controlled. But I could see it in the tight set of his shoulders. The pressure. I stepped into the open before I could talk myself out of it. A dozen weapons tracked me instantly. "Stand down," someone shouted. Adam's head snapped up. Our eyes locked across the space between us, the same space that had kept us apart the first night. He raised a hand. "Hold," he said. The weapons didn't lower, but they stopped advancing. "You shouldn't be here," Adam said, voice carrying. "Funny," I replied. "I was thinking the same about you." A ripple of tension moved through the line. "This operation is unauthorized," a commander barked from behind Adam. "Protocol." "Protocol ends now," Adam said. Every head turned. He reached up and tore the insignia from his collar, letting it fall to the wet ground. Gasps. Shouts. Cameras zoomed in. "I'm refusing this order," Adam continued, loud and clear. "This action endangers civilians, and exists solely to preserve a false narrative of control." The commander stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're committing career suicide." Adam didn't look back. His gaze stayed on me. "Some systems deserve it," he said. The bridge erupted. Corporate lines fractured as units hesitated. Street crews surged, then stopped, uncertain. The third party's mercenaries, because of course they were there, moved in fast, trying to turn confusion into bloodshed. I made my choice. "Fall back!" I shouted to my people. "Protect civilians. Let the bridge go." Mara's voice came sharp and disbelieving. "Toby. Now." They listened. I vaulted a barrier, and ran straight into the mess, dragging a trapped driver out of a car as debris rained down. I didn't swing for territory. I didn't claim ground. I pulled people out. Adam was there too, hauling a security officer to safety, shoving someone behind cover, ignoring shouted commands that meant nothing now. Side by side, a blast rocked the bridge, throwing us both to the ground. My ears rang. My vision swam. Adam's hand closed around my arm, steady and solid. "You okay?" I nodded, breath ragged. "You." Still standing. We pushed up together. By the time reinforcements arrived, the kind that answered to no board, the narrative had collapsed. Cameras caught everything. The refusal. The rescue. The mercenaries trying to force escalation and failing. The bridge didn't belong to anyone anymore. As the chaos eased into stunned quiet, Adam and I stood in the rain, surrounded by people who were alive because we'd chosen them over power. "You just burned every bridge you had," I said softly. He met my eyes. "No. I crossed the right one." For the first time, I believed him. And I knew I'd made my choice too. Not as a leader. Not as an Omega. As a person. The city looked different after the storm. Not cleaner. Not fixed. Just exposed. Morning light crept over rooftops slick with rain, catching on broken barriers, abandoned vehicles. The scorched edge of the bridge where everything had finally snapped. News drones hovered like curious birds. Feeds buzzing with resublachania. Speculation, names dragged into daylight whether they liked it or not. Shell companies. Quiet investors. Stability consultants. Funny how fast ghosts became people once the cameras turned. On the street there was confusion. Packs holding ground they'd never held before, corporate units pulling back without orders, civilians trying to understand why the rules had changed overnight. It wasn't peace. But it wasn't the old war either. I stood on a rooftop overlooking the river, coffee cooling in my hands, body aching in places I didn't want to inventory yet. The warehouse was safe. My people were safe, shaken, angry, alive. That counted. "You look like hell," Adam said behind me. I snorted. "You look worse." He stepped up beside me, equally rumpled, jacket gone for good, dark circles under his eyes. No insignia. No security detail. Just a man who'd slept maybe an hour on a chair that cost more than my first car. "Good morning to you too," he said dryly. We watched the city for a while, comfortable in the shared silence. "They're tearing your board apart," I said eventually. "Some of them deserve it," he replied. "Others are pretending they never knew what was happening." "And you?" He shrugged. "I'm unemployed." I blinked. Then laughed. A real one this time, surprised out of me. "Wow. I really did ruin you." "You're expensive," he said. "I should have negotiated better." I took a sip of coffee, grimaced. "This is terrible." "You still drank it." "Bad habits." He glanced at me sideways. "You pulled your people back yesterday. You could have taken territory while everything was burning." "Yeah," I said. "And lost half of them doing it." Adam nodded slowly. "You chose them." "Funny thing about leadership," I said. "It's not about how much ground you hold. It's about how many people trust you not to get them killed." He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. "That's not how I was taught." I noticed. We shared a look. Tired, wry, unguarded. "They're calling us a lot of things," Adam said. "Traitors, idealists, reckless. Don't forget, Unexpectedly cooperative, I added. That one's my favorite. He smiled faintly. Mine too. The wind off the river carried the city's noise up to us. Sirens fading. Voices rising. Life reorganizing itself without waiting for permission. This is messy, Adam said. Yeah. And it's not over. Nope. He turned to me fully then. But for the first time, it's honest. I met his gaze. No posturing. No alpha weight pressing down. Just a man who'd stepped out of a system, and was still standing. Guess the borders really did fall, I said. Adam tilted his head. Good. We stood there. Two survivors in a city, learning how to breathe again. No speeches. No promises carved in stone. Just the quiet certainty that whatever came next, we wouldn't be facing it from opposite sides of the bridge. The water was calm for once. Not empty. Boats still passed. People still argued and laughed and lived. But steady, like the city had finally stopped holding its breath. The new neutral district stretched along the river, where old warehouses had been cleared, and rebuilt into something that didn't belong to anyone, and therefore belonged to everyone. No flags. No corporate logos. No pack markings carved into concrete. Just open space and rules written in pencil. I walked the pier with my hands in my pockets, listening to the sound of footsteps beside me. Adam moved differently now. Lighter. Like he wasn't carrying an entire tower on his shoulders anymore. You realize, he said, glancing at a group of kids playing near the water, that half the city thinks this won't last. They're probably right, I replied. Half the city also thought the bridge would never fall. He smiled. Fair point. The structure we'd built wasn't pretty. It was a patchwork. Street reps, former corporate analysts, independent mediators. No single authority. No one allowed to hold power alone for too long. Messy. Honest. They keep asking what to call it, Adam said. This place? I shrugged. Names turn into ownership. Let's not rush that. He hummed in agreement. You're very bad for my old habits. I try. We stopped at the edge of the pier, the river stretching out before us. Sunlight danced on the surface, blinding and bright. I didn't think this would be my life, Adam said quietly. Walking away from everything I built. I looked at him. You didn't walk away. You rebuilt. He met my gaze, something warm and steady settling between us. Not heat. Not dominance. Choice. I used to think territory was something you defended, I said. Something you bled for. And now? I watched the people moving through the space. Omegas and alphas, humans and shifters, all sharing ground without asking permission. Now I think territory is something you protect by letting others stand on it too. Adam nodded slowly. We stood there a moment longer, the future stretching wide and uncertain, and not frightening at all. When he reached for my hand, it wasn't a claim. It was an invitation. I took it. Because territory isn't lines on a map. It's the place where you stop fighting. And for the first time, standing by the water in a city that had finally cracked open, I knew exactly where I belonged.